Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers, presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Joining me, that's right, it's Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor. Go Birds, Charlie.
Go Birds. You know what? Go Birds.
I was like in shock of what I saw for hours last night. We're well into the Ravens game, and I'm just like, all my friends had left. We're chilling. Let's look over at Ava. It's like, yo, did that really just happen? That was one of the greatest games in all of Philly sports history, as far as I am concerned.
It was a fun game, and it was one of those games where during the game, I was terrified. I was extremely nervous.
It was a roller coaster.
And tense. And then the game ends, and after about 5 minutes, I just sat up and I said, that was a great football game.
That was a classic.
I didn't realize it at the time because I was just terrified. But once the Eagles won, then you could accept that, yeah, that was, if I didn't have a stake in that game, that would have just been a great football game to watch.
It's funny. I complained about like the quality of the NFL product all year. And then, like 3 of the 4 playoff games this weekend were fan-freaking
Divisional
fantastic.
playoff round is the best weekend of football. It is. It absolutely is. And
4 games, 2 days, great stuff.
Well, and it's also just that you have all of the teams that stink are out.
Yeah.
You only are left with the good teams.
And now, Charlie, next week, I don't want to overstate this because like Super Bowls are obviously their own thing, championships their own thing. In terms of a non-championship game, maybe the biggest in Philadelphia sports history. It is a battle for the soul of the city. Josh Harris, coming in to the sports
which
complex.
Direction you were taking this.
Coming into the sports complex that he wanted to disassemble, and he could take that team to a Super Bowl through us now. It can't be allowed. It might be the most important game in this city's history.
I wasn't accounting for the Josh Harris factor, but yes, he is a thoroughly unlikable human being.
And I just got to go win it. It does always make me a little jealous. Like, I'm watching the Eagles show before ours today. Like, I want to be doing that. I don't want to be, like, I don't need the Calder Trophy to be the most important thing in my life right now. But we will get to some hockey. We will get to some hockey. Thank you for hanging with us for 2.5 minutes there. A little bit of news today. I guess we'll start with the newsy stuff, as I like to do. Ryan Poehling, after being demolished in that Islanders game, which led to a 3-game suspension, he has been officially placed on IR with an upper body injury. I'm going to guess it's his brain. And
it's a concussion.
Yeah, it's a concussion.
Yeah.
And they have actually made a roster move. They've called up Rodrigo Abols from Lehigh Valley. So there was a call up. We talked about the possibility of maybe Jacob Gaucher, Abols, along with Oscar Eklund, a couple of the Swedish centers they brought over.
Well, Abols is Latvian.
From the SHL.
But he came from the SHL.
A couple of the guys from the SHL that they signed in the offseason to help bolster the organizational center depth.
Abols is interesting. He was telling us, we obviously got to talk to him today. Interesting guy. He knows 4 languages. He knows Swedish, I believe. So he knows English, obviously, because he spoke to us in English. He obviously knows Latvian because he's from Latvia. He knows Russian, and I believe he also knows Swedish. So he knows 4 languages, speaks them all, because we learned, I believe it was in camp, that he was talking with Michkov because he knows Russian, but not the only language he knows. He knows 4. He was also telling us.
You ever talk to some of these foreign players or just anyone from a different place and go like,
how do you do it?
My God.
Yeah, how do you do it?
I feel so stupid.
Europeans, well, you know what it is? Like, you have all these countries with all these individual cultures, and they're real close to each other.
No, it's like if people in Delaware, if Kelly was coming on the show speaking a different language.
Yeah, exactly.
It blows my mind. Like, I have a Danish friend, and I'm like, what language do you dream in? He's like, all different ones. That's impossible.
Depending on the day. Depending on how much alcohol I had that day leading into going to sleep.
Rodrigo Abols.
Rodrigo Abols. So Abols is the call-up. I got the impression today from talking with John Tortorella that the real reason for Abols is the fact that he's a center. Obviously, Poehling goes down. I know our commenters would much prefer one Anthony Richard, that they love him so much.
Yeah.
However, it did seem like they were going to call up a center. Jacob Gaucher would be an interesting option. As you broke down in our outline, Gaucher has 25 points in 40 games. Abols has 19 points in 34. So points-wise, Gaucher would seem to be the better pick. However, you also have on here, Gaucher's 23. Abols is 29. Gaucher just recently got an entry-level deal and is still presumably in the process of developing. Abols is what he is. Also, Abols is, he has professional experience. Yes, he only has this, 3-4 month period in the AHL, but he spent a lot of time in the SHL. He's played pro hockey. Seems like they just want to bring him up because probably he's the safer option over Gaucher, where with Gaucher, they're probably still thinking that he's not yet a finished product, whereas Abols probably is. Also, it gives them a chance to see what they have in this kid. Gaucher's under contract for a while. They obviously just signed him to the ELC. They've got some time to figure out what he is. With Abols, if they're going to find out if he's worth keeping around, you probably have to give him a shot in the NHL at some point.
It's like now.
Yeah, this is the opportunity.
You have 3 months.
Now, that said, there's no guarantee he's going to play.
Yeah.
Because he was in practice, obviously, today. He was in the line rushes, and he was in between Aleksei and Garnet Hathaway. That would presumably be the 4C spot. However, Scott Laughton was not at practice today. Scott Laughton, we were told by Flyers PR, dealing with a family situation. He's away from the team currently. That said, and I don't want to speculate on what the family situation is, and hopefully it's nothing bad, but tomorrow night, Tuesday night's game is the Pride game. Scott Laughton, obviously, it's a cause that he cares deeply about. It's something that he has worked, with the team with for years. I would think it's pretty unlikely he's going to miss that game.
I look at that as like, the story of the pregame fight with Montreal. The coach locks Ron Hextall in the equipment room so he can't get out there and fight. Unless they lock up Scott Laughton, he's going to play in that game.
Yeah.
That's just my guess.
And he also probably has, off-ice responsibilities for the game. He invites people to the games. Usually for these Pride games, he invites a big group. So I think he'll just want to be there. So I can't imagine he misses the game. And if he comes back and he plays, does Abols stay in the lineup? He could. They could put Laughton on the wing and push Aleksei out and keep Abols in and give him the game. But there's no guarantee he's going to play. That said, he's here. So you would think at some point they're going to want to at least get a look at him.
He's here, and you want to get a look at him, and just like looking at what they need organizationally, like not just in the future. Right now, they need centers. We know this. Ryan Poehling, one of the guys that the coach trusts at the end of games. We saw in the last game, they're trying to protect that lead against the Devils, and it's all Cates. Couturier isn't out there for most of the second half of the third period.
No.
Morgan Frost, obviously, that's not exactly going to be his thing, winning faceoffs in the defensive zone, trying to protect the lead. Even if he was good at it, the coach might just be like, yeah, I don't trust you. That's one of the things you need Ryan Poehling for. I can see a stylistic fit because I was just trying to look up some things about Abols today, and Bob Rotruck had a tweet just kind of talking about what kind of player he is. And looks, he has a big shot. Maybe you can use him on the power play a little, or net front presence.
Net front guy,
as power play too, something like that. But very good on faceoffs. And that right there is like, I know we go back and forth, like maybe faceoffs not nearly as important as a broadcast. Oh man, well they're the best team in the league on faceoffs. It's like you're talking about the Islanders; they're in last place. Something tells me it's not the biggest thing.
Yeah.
The Flyers were the best
Flyers
were the best faceoff team in hockey for Giroux's second part of his tenure, and maybe they made the playoffs sometimes. But there are big faceoffs that you have to win or at least be competitive in at the end of games. Don't want to lose cleanly. I could just see him kind of fitting into a role for this team. Like Aleksei, they want to get a look at him too. But here's the thing. What do they need? More wingers?
Yeah.
I'm this is
skeptical.
just a thing you kind of want to see now and for the future.
I would agree. So I do think that, because they straight up said, Tortorella said that the center aspect was big. I'm skeptical that the face-off thing is a big part of it. Reason being is that call up guys that are getting their first taste of the NHL. Number one, there's a lot of tricks you need to figure out to be a good face-off guy in the NHL, and usually that only comes with time. Number two, and so many players over the course of my career have told me this, a lot of being good at face-offs at the NHL level is the refs get to know you and then they let you get away with more. They're not going to let Abols do all the things that they let Noah Cates even do now because they've gotten to know him and now he's a veteran and he's established, so they let him cheat a little bit more. They're not going to let Abols do that because he doesn't have that established presence. He's not a clear-cut NHLer yet. So I don't think they're calling him up really to help with face-offs, but I do think that they want to have another guy who can play center, especially losing Poehling. Whereas a guy like Anthony Richard, he might be able to replace the speed you lose with Poehling out, but he's not a center, especially not at the NHL level.
No, and just he probably won't be over 50, 51% in the dot, but in that role of being able to at least be competitive, play the position, give you a chance, unlike a winger just having to jump in there would have to. But it's just going to be interesting to see how they do this. Could easily just make Scott Laughton the 4C, keep Lycksell in there, move some other things around, or you could give this guy a shot. I'm hoping he at least gets a little bit of a shot. And the penalty kill, also another aspect of this. Ryan Poehling, big part of that. Yeah. And you just lose one of those dudes. Sure, you can make Sean Couturier part of it, but we talked about this last time we were together. I think they're managing his minutes, and I think that's smart. How many miles do you want to put on Sean Couturier in seasons that don't actually matter?
I'm more skeptical they're managing his minutes. But you know what? If it serves the purpose of managing his minutes, then maybe they could be falling backwards into a good strategy.
That managing his minutes like it's Joel Embiid, no. Because for what? A hypothetical playoff run 3 years from now? No. They're managing his minutes in terms of one, the coach just doesn't think he's that good.
That's why.
That's part of it. But, no one is. That's why they're calling up Rodrigo Abols to replace Ryan Poehling. These aren't franchise players we're talking about here. And still, they're pretty integral parts of what this team does, especially defensively. You don't want to put everything on him still, even if, he can do it. And, I'm just...
It's interesting. I'd like to see him at least get a game or two.
Yeah,
just
definitely.
To see what they have. Because as you put on the... as Brenna actually put on the graphic, he's only on a 1-year contract.
Yeah, he's a UFA.
He might, if the Flyers decide that he's never going to be a full-time NHLer, he just might go back. He just might go back to the SHL and have a nice, career into his early to mid-30s, playing, 40, 50 games a year, on top lines in the SHL. You're going to look at him. Now, we'll see. We'll see how he does. With regards to Poehling, I actually asked John Tortorella about him. I basically, couched the question as, look, I know you're not going to give us an update, but also it's a pretty scary injury. Is he doing okay? And Torts basically said, look, it's a head injury. Obviously, there's going to be ups and downs. Some days are going to be better than others, but he does get the impression from Tommy Alva, the trainer, that Poehling is trending in the right direction, that he's getting better day by day, which is good.
That's great.
Because, that was a scary injury. He was clearly, you could tell that I don't know if he was completely knocked out, but he was pretty close to it if he wasn't completely knocked out.
I don't know if he was out, but he was out of it.
Yeah, he was very out of it.
He didn't look good, I'll say that.
And my understanding is it's not the first concussion he's gotten in his career. He got a couple in Pittsburgh.
I read today that he's got a history. It's been a little bit, he was clean last year, and now we're halfway through this year, but anyone who's had a few in their pro career,
it's concerning.
You get a little, okay.
Yeah, you worry about him. So I hope that, as serious as it looked, hopefully this is something he can get past pretty quick, both for the Flyers' sake and also for Ryan Poehling's sake as both a player and a person, because, in my dealings with him, he seems like a good dude, and also he's been a good find for the Flyers, I would say.
We also got a little bit of an update, I guess a confirmation, the way they were using the goalies. We knew Ivan Fedotov was number 2, but you actually got a chance to ask today, because kind of the last time they actually told us, it was Kolosov's the number 2. And then, Kolosov stunk for a little bit. Right. And Fedotov worked his way back in there, and we actually got the update I saw in a tweet you put out today, Charlie.
Correct.
Tortorella confirms that Ivan Fedotov is now the team's number 2 goalie. Says they're not sure yet what they're going to do with Kolosov, if he'll stay up or what happens. A lot of moving parts and conversations happening internally about it.
Yes, the direct quote on Kolosov, because Tortorella was directly asked about Aleksei Kolosov. It wasn't my question, but I was about to ask it. And I think Jackie jumped in and asked it. So like, okay, hey, as long as he's getting asked, I don't care who does the asking. But the answer was, yeah, there's a lot of communication, a lot of stuff going on with that. So
what the hell does that mean? I just love hockey.
Well, I mean, what it does tell you is that this clearly isn't
it's an issue.
This isn't as simple as, well, we're keeping him up because we want to. This is if we're going to send him down to the AHL, this is a conversation that we have to have, and it's a conversation that needs to be ongoing with Kolosov and his camp, because at least we are not yet certain how he would react to being sent down.
This kid needs to play.
Yeah, he does.
And if he doesn't understand, he needs to play in North America so he can master the North American game, and that he is nowhere near ready for the NHL level. I don't know. I'm all ready to jump all over the Flyers organization for a couple of things we're going to talk about from your article, what you would do at the trade deadline, which I thought was great. Because you get yelled at enough.
My thing is, if I'm going to get yelled at, I want to get yelled at for what I actually believe rather than what people assume I believe. So let me just put out there everything I think the Flyers should do, and then I can refer to that when people yell at me.
Just link it.
Yeah, just link it.
And you got to pay to read it. So
yeah, exactly.
You want to know? You want to know what I think? You got to pay me for it. That's what I always say. Honestly, it's why I don't talk that much like on Twitter. Watch my show. But anyway, I'm all ready to jump all over them about a couple of these things. But like, if you just can't convince a dude what's best for him, like I don't know what the what they're doing now is essentially holding him hostage.
Either he's holding them hostage or they're holding him hostage. Depending on which way you look at it.
But like, they're not going to play him because they're kind of in this, as we'll talk about after the break. And
also, they have eyes, and they can see that he's not yet ready to be a regular goalie at the NHL level.
That's like, the games actually matter because they could make the playoffs. So we're not just going to do that. They're not going to leave a prospect out there to get his head kicked in, because that's what's happening right now. Like, so we're just going to keep you on the NHL roster. You're not going to play. You're not going to get any better. Hopefully you get some practice time. Like, I don't see how he thinks that's good for him, but whatever.
I believe we talked about it too. Either we talked about it off the show or we talked about this on a recent show. But you also have to remember the fact that the KHL season ends in mid-March. The team that he presumably would go back to, Minsk, which is where he's from in Belarus, they're not very good. So they're probably not, if they make the playoffs, they're not going to last very long in the playoffs. There is a theory that maybe the Flyers are just kind of trying to run the clock out, because if they look at it as, well, if we can find a way to hang on to Kolosov at the NHL level through the Four Nations tournament, by the time they come back from Four Nations, it's 3 weeks into February. What's he going to do? Like, leave and go back and play for a week in the KHL, like 2 weeks after he gets done the travel and gets himself back into game shape and on a team? They might just be kind of running the clock out here and then figure, well, after we get back from Four Nations, then we're going to send him down to the minors, because what's he going to do? Leave? That could be it. That said, it's a weird situation. But the reason why this is news, Tortorella's point that he made today, is that the last time we asked John Tortorella about Fedotov and where he stood, this was early last week, I believe, Tortorella was not willing to call Fedotov the 2. Now, he was using him like the 2. Obviously, he was getting the games that Ersson wasn't getting. He was sitting as the backup on the bench, so he was dressing for games. So the actions told us he was now the 2. But when Tortorella was asked directly, Tortorella more or less said, well, we're going to see what happens. Fedotov's getting the look right now. He wasn't willing to say he's the 2, Kolosov's the 3. Today, for the first time, he was willing to say, yeah, Fedotov has jumped Kolosov in the depth chart. He is now the number 2 again, which then allows you to follow up and say, okay, well, if Kolosov is the 3, how long is he going to be the 3 before you actually have to make a decision on this?
So we'll see how that goes. I was just trying to figure out the AHL playoff format for while Charlie was talking to see Like, all right, could they get him down there and then maybe get him in for the playoffs down there as well?
Playoffs?
And the way it works, like, yeah, like everyone in the AHL at least has like a qualification round. Like he'd at least get like a 3-game series or something, if not more. So the Phantoms are 5th in the Atlantic, but they're a few games over 500. So they would be, they would qualify at least for that first like divisional round that they do. All right, before we go any further, I got to talk to you about our presenting sponsor, Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. You know, I've been using Bet365 since they became our presenting sponsor last year. I got to say, I'm a big fan of their sportsbook, whether it's all the live games they stream, the early payouts I've been telling you about. Man, if you're a Montreal fan, I bet you would have really liked to be able to cash out on that 3-goal lead you had on the Leafs the other night. But regardless, I've been placing all my pregame bets there, my props, my futures, all of it is at Bet365. And we have breaking news from our presenting sponsor, Bet365. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when they bet just $5, win or lose. Sign up, use code PHLY365, deposit $10, and then place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets, whether your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And while we're here, why don't I tell you about our friends at Glatt Hair Restoration? That's right. You've been hearing about Glatt Hair for years from John Marks, well before he even got here to PHLY. He was a spokesman and a customer. Johnny, his hair looks great, man, and he got his restoration years ago. Now, Glatt Hair under the direction of Dr. Morgenstern, but you still get the same peerless approach to care, the same expert team, the same unmatched Glatt system, same state-of-the-art location, and same stellar results now under a highly respected plastic surgeon. And each member of this exceptionally trained team brings 30-plus years of industry experience. Hair restoration is all they do, from laser light therapy to non-invasive TED treatments, vitamin supplementation, medications, PRP and stem cell restoration, or hair restoration surgery. So bald is now optional. If you want to improve how you look and how you feel about yourself, Glatt Hair has the right treatment for you. Regain your confidence. Visit glatthairmctr.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started today. My one question now about the goalies, Charlie, because we went a couple of shows ago and said, okay, how do you think they're going to break this down? You asked a funny question. Is it just harder to trust a goalie like Fedotov because it's weird looking?
Yeah.
Like He
doesn't naturally pass the eye test, especially for a coach who, by his own admission, doesn't know anything about goaltending.
He's just listen, this isn't a crazy bias.
No.
You watch Ivan Fedotov and you go, what the hell's he doing?
It's weird. He plays weird.
He left his crease in practice today during the between the blue lines drill to poke someone. You have about 3 feet of ice that you're working with, and he's coming out of his net. He's weird looking.
Yeah. It's a weird goalie.
How much the coach trusts either guy, though, I really wonder if it actually matters who the number 2 is, who the number 3 is.
It matters.
Because
does matter.
I'm starting to get the feeling that this is going to be all Ersson.
Oh, no. Don't do that again.
Not to the extent of last year.
Please, let's not go back down that
path. But,
path.
the extent that a normal, maybe not Connor Hellebuck, but a normal number 1 starter would get. 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, whatever that might be. I just think that's what they're going to go with. And honestly, Ersson's been, it's 5 games. And there is one horrendous one in there. But even with that in there, since returning from the New Year's Eve injury, his latest of 3.
Right.
So, you got to cross your fingers on him. He's 4-1-0 with a .908 save percentage and 1 shutout.
Yeah.
That's really good by basically all standards this season.
More than good enough.
That's for this team especially.
Yeah.
But
league average is .901.
That's what we've talked about all years. The save percentages are not what they were a few years ago. A .908 is now very good.
Yeah.
It's no longer, that's around average. No, that's actually well above average now.
It is.
I kind of am getting the feeling it's going to be all Ersson. I know we talked about all right, maybe it's an 8-4, maybe it's a 7-5 split. When there was still 12 games left before the Four Nations break. Now there's 10. How do you think it's going to go?
Well, we talked about this last week when we broke down the goalies. I forget which show it was, but it was on one of our normal shows.
Yeah.
And
Probably only had one.
We went through each game leading up to Four Nations. And I said that I thought a key indicator as to how they are going to approach this would have been Saturday's game. Because I said, Ersson almost certainly is going to get Thursday's game. That's just the way he's the number one. He's going to get that game. But if they come back with Ersson on Saturday after Ersson gets Thursday, that will tell us that they are going to give Ersson the bulk of these starts. And Fedotov really might just get the back-to-backs during this run. Well, they went with Ersson. And Ersson played fine. I mean, he didn't get a ton of actual shots on goal, but he did have to deal with a lot of pressure in the defensive zone. Like, they had the puck a lot, the Devils did. It's just that they didn't get a lot through, but it meant he had to be very active and be ready for all these shots.
The whole game was high leverage.
Yeah, they took a ton of shots at him. And hey, even if these shots end up getting blocked, he doesn't know that for a fact. So he's got to be set and ready to make these saves in case they go through.
They had like close to 70 attempts. I think it was like 68 attempts or something.
Yeah, no, they peppered away. They just didn't hit the net on a lot of them.
Through.
But I think Saturday was a tell. Saturday was the tell that, Ersson is going to get most of these starts. Like, looking at the schedule for the rest of this Four Nations run, they have a back-to-back this week, the 23rd and the 24th. I would assume Fedotov gets one of those games. Then they have a back-to-back the next week, the 29th and the 30th. Fedotov will get one of those games,
and that's it.
But I would guess that it'll be the next 2 weeks. It'll be 4 and 2. Ersson will get 4. Fedotov will get 2, and then that final week, when they go to Denver and Utah, and then they play Washington and Pittsburgh at home, maybe Fedotov gets 1. Because I don't think that they want to throw him out there for 4 starts in a week. There is precedent of them saying, no, we weren't going to give Ersson 4 starts in a week. But I think it'll be 3-1. I don't think it'll be 2-2, what does that mean? That means it's going to be 7-3 the rest of the way. 7-3 the rest of the way.
Because, those last 4, the February games, there's no back-to-backs, but it's all every other day. There is some travel. There's no more than one day between, so... Yeah, you don't want to put him out there 4 in a row like that, probably, especially coming back from the injuries. But that's what I'm thinking now. And then he's going to have the 2 weeks off. Do we know who the other Swedish goalie is yet? Have they announced? Are they just waiting on Ullmark to see if he can go?
I would assume.
Do we have any idea?
I would assume they're waiting on Ullmark to see if he'll be ready for Four Nations.
But even if he goes, as we said, not a ton of a chance he's going to be playing
he's
much.
Probably not going to get it.
Unless there's an injury, I don't see him getting into a game.
It would be a nice career achievement, pat on the back,
the third goalie,
and also position him for maybe a higher role in the future. But I can't imagine he's going to be driving the bus for Team Sweden.
So either way, he's going to get a little bit of a break here, and then you come back, and the schedule's really not as crazy. I can see it being a whole lot of Sam Ersson and not a whole lot of Ivan Fedotov over the next couple of months. That's just the way I see this breaking down.
I could as well, especially given the way they seem to be treating him.
Yeah. They believe, at least for now, let's see if he can be our number 1.
Yeah.
And it's not how I would handle it, but it's what they've kind of gone with all season when he's healthy. And as far as we can tell right now, he's healthy, so they're gonna ride him.
And he's on a little bit of a run now.
And he's playing well,
So maybe the thought is, hey, if he starts struggling, then maybe Fedotov bites off a little bit more of this workload. But he's playing as well as he's played, I would say, all year. Overall, not amazing, but he's playing fine. And hey, maybe if he has a strong finish of the year and can get his save percentage over 900, he's not going to have an amazing season, because I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah, I mean,
but if he ends up with a 902, 903, maybe the Flyers aren't totally dismissing the possibility that he could be their number 1, 2, 3 years in the future and be significantly above average.
What I think it impacts the most is how they attack next year, and you kind of included that in one of your points in the article you wrote about how you would handle the trade deadline.
Right.
Point number 3, and we're going to get into a lot more of this, but just looking at the standings, the upcoming schedule, everything this team might be going through. And listen, 10 games before Four Nations. I think there's 6 after Four Nations before the All-Star or before the trade deadline. So it's kind of approaching faster than it seems because of that break in there. They're 4-0-1 in their last 5. They're only 3 points behind Columbus for the second wild card. They're ahead of Detroit, Pittsburgh, and the Isles by points and points percentage. they're kind of in it right now.
Yeah.
And the games matter a little bit. So that's your point was point number 3 in your trade deadline thing. Check in on available goalies around the league, but only do something if Ersson gets hurt again. Do you think that's how they're seeing this right now?
I don't know if they would do anything even if Ersson gets hurt, but I would, because my view, and this goes back to the conversations we've had for weeks now, is how much longer can the Flyers skaters continue to play the quality hockey that they have been playing for quite a while? And John Tortorella reiterated that today, that he felt like even when the goaltending was playing poorly, 3-4 weeks ago, that skaters were playing fine. It was really just the goaltending, which is a point I made in one of my articles as well. I don't know how long the skaters can keep playing that well without getting understandably frustrated with the fact that the goalies can't stop a beach ball. I am confident that if Ersson stays healthy, I don't know how good he's going to be. Maybe he'll struggle. But I believe that the players are confident enough in him that they will not completely fall apart as long as Ersson is in the mix and getting the bulk of the starts. If Ersson goes down, though, and he, re-injures his groin and they have to sit him out for the rest of the season because he needs surgery or whatever, and then suddenly it's Fedotov and Kolosov or Fedotov and Peterson, yeah, I would be legitimately worried that after 2.5, 3 weeks of that, the Flyers end up running around like chickens with their heads cut off out there because they know that any shot they allow is going to end up in the back of the net. And I want to avoid that because what I'm seeing, and I write this out in the article, what I'm seeing over these last couple months is a team that's starting to establish an actual on-ice identity in the sense of they are really controlling play at 5-on-5. They are doing a really good job. Are they talented enough to take full advantage of all that puck possession yet? No, of course not. They don't have enough high-end players. Matvei Michkov isn't what he ultimately will become, hopefully. He's going to get better. He's not yet a superstar. They hope he will become one, and when he does, if he does, then they're probably going to score more goals at 5-on-5 because he's going to be able to drive the bus. And then we assume at some point down the road they're going to get better players. Either these guys they have are going to get better, or they're going to go out and trade for better players or sign better players. But what I want is I want them to have this established baseline of a team that is committed enough to a system that works, that you can just trust that every year they're going to be a 54% expected goals for share team or higher at 5-on-5. Like that's functionally Carolina. Carolina can do work around the edges. They can trade for guys who have struggled in terms of play driving at 5-on-5 historically because they look at their team and they say, we are so locked in on doing what we do that, we can move a piece out, we can move a piece in. We're still going to drive play. We're still going to control play at 5-on-5. I see a Flyers team that may be starting to turn that into like a natural reflex rather than being something they have to work really, really hard to do. Now it's just what they are. And I don't want to lose that over the course of a month at the end of the season and then never get it back just because the goalies can't stop anything, which is why I would, if I were Danny Briere, I would be checking around just to see what's available. And no, I'm not saying trade for John Gibson. I'm not saying give up a high pick, but I am saying see who's available that you could get with a 4th or a 5th round pick or, a low-end defenseman prospect in your organization, something like that, and just keep it in your back pocket. And if Ersson were to get injured, maybe you make a deal to bring in a guy who could be better than Ivan Fedotov for the rest of the year, just to keep that structure and that stability and what they seem to be building at 5-on-5, just to keep that rolling so that it's still rolling 2-3 years down the road when hopefully they are a more talented team and can actually be a cup contender.
Open it up a little bit, but then that reflex is still there.
Still there.
It's a lot of the argument that I made to Kelly about Tortorella's system and Mike Richards' argument as well. I really appreciate you bringing up the John Gibson thing simply because his name definitely came up in 2 different shows I listened. I definitely came up on Puck Soup and it definitely came up on 32 Thoughts recently, like maybe a week or 2 ago, just in terms of, the Flyers need a goalie. Like, look at what's going on for them right now. And then, like, someone who might be statistically inclined is like, if they got to save, they'd be in the playoff.
Yeah.
You know, and listen, we said a lot of the same stuff last year.
Yeah.
It's just this year has been more about, well, we also have two completely inexperienced guys, and the dude who we think is our number one right now was hurt half the year. But I can't imagine that they're into surrendering premium assets for a goaltender.
I mean, the thing with Gibson is I don't even know if he would cost that much because he hasn't been very good the last few years. The thing is that it's not like he's an expiring contract and he's got a big cap. I just don't know if I want to take that on just to get a guy who honestly might be cooked. I would rather take a flyer on a guy who either shows promise in the AHL or is an Alex Lyon type who you're confident can at least be competent at the NHL level, but isn't going to cost much. I'd rather go that route if I'm going to address the goaltending. But I do think it is important for them, in my opinion, to have a plan B if Ersson were to get hurt again that isn't just, well, throw Ivan Fedotov out there and cross our fingers.
Yeah, it is. Gibson, decent year this year, 909 and a 286. But it's the first time in like 4 years he's below 3 goals, like 904 or worse in the last like 6 seasons. But there is a thought that he's getting caved in by a terrible team. And if you put a decent team in front of him, he'd be better. But I cannot imagine that's a fit for the Flyers.
It's a little harder to buy into, though, given the fact that Lukas Dostal is playing very well in front of that same team.
Yes. Let's take a look at the standings right now, Charlie. Let's look at where this Flyers team is, because you put the muddled middle is how you described it in your article, yes. And man, yeah, that's exactly where they are. You see, like Buffalo, a laughing stock. All right, we're 9 points up on them, and we're a few points out of the playoffs. Yeah. There's teams they have to jump, and it's like Boston and New York are just sitting there like, if you guys get it together a little bit, then it's over. You should walk away with this thing.
They're the most talented teams.
You guys should be like
maybe Ottawa.
Yeah, Ottawa there, but it's all right. What can we get out of Ullmark? We'll see. Columbus, they're kind of the Flyers of last year, like just kind of riding high. And it's, when's this going to end? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't.
Maybe it doesn't.
Like it doesn't for the Flyers if Sam Ersson like doesn't have to play every single game and falls off a cliff. Like they probably make it last year.
Yeah. No, if Carter Hart isn't involved in a terrible thing, they probably make the playoffs. It's just a fact.
Yeah, it's maybe Columbus is able to keep this up, but you just look at it and go, I don't see Montreal really hanging around. They are finally taking steps. Detroit, Pittsburgh, the Islanders, all right, man, sure. I guess they're in it, but they haven't really shown much life. Yeah. Like they're sub 500 teams. Detroit's at 500. We're over the halfway mark now. Like, I don't know. You probably have to be 500 for me to take you seriously at this point in the season.
Fair.
But they're right there. It's totally possible. So when we get to how could the trade deadline affect this race? Last year, it wasn't a fire sale, but Danny Briere did the one thing that he absolutely had to do.
Right.
He
didn't have to, but he did. He did it.
It's the one, I mean, he had to.
Well, I'm just saying there were people who thought that they should just ride it out, and they didn't because they are in a rebuild. They did the right move for a team that is in a rebuild. But I'm just saying, it's not like there weren't other paths they could have chosen.
There are paths they could have chosen. They were incorrect. Like, yeah, I could take the elevator down to my car, or I could jump out the 7th floor window when the show's over and see if I can live. Yeah. But, like,
it's fair.
You should take the elevator down.
One is a significantly smarter decision.
One is way better choice than the other. Like, I'm just saying. Like, he did the thing he had to do. It wasn't like, oh, we're selling off every asset, everything that's not nailed down. But in the midst of a playoff race, you know, whether you want to call Walker their most effective, their second or third most effective, he was easily in their top 4 defense last year.
Easily.
Like that pair, not maybe getting the minutes or the usage that Sanheim York did, but Sealer Walker was like the reason they were good because we had 2 pairs.
Yeah.
And he said, even with all the defenders we have hurt, I am trading this guy. It was the right thing to do. They got a first-round pick for him. I mean, the Ryan Johansson thing's still going on, but who the hell cares?
Well, technically, he's not on their books.
Yeah, he's not on the books now. Maybe he never will be. But he did the right thing. But now they don't really have that guy.
They don't.
Where it's like
they re-signed all their expiring contracts.
Yeah, where it's like, even the JVR thing a few years ago, like, I don't know, what were they actually going to get for him? A 6th round pick? But you still just had to do it. You couldn't figure it out. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
It was an extremely bad look given the perception amongst people who follow the Flyers of Chuck Fletcher.
This is a given. You just do this. Who cares? Like, he's not coming back. Get something. Also, man, the dude's in his 30s. Trade him to a playoff team. Do something. They didn't. They don't have that guy this year. But there are some options that would, like, significantly take the wind out of this team's sails. And the first one, I think, is a must in season. And I think you do too. It's Rasmus Ristolainen.
Yeah.
That was number one in your article.
My number one thing that I would do at the deadline is trade Ristolainen before the deadline. And I acknowledge in my write-up that, look, it's not like they couldn't trade him later. He does have 2 more years left on his contract. They could trade him in the offseason. They could trade him at next deadline. It's not like they have to trade him now. That said, I do think that not trading him at this deadline is risky because we're talking about a guy who last 2 seasons, especially last year, missed a lot of time due to injury. We're also talking about a guy who's 30 years old, who turns 31, I believe, in either October or November. October, yeah. So he's not young. If you keep him, there's a risk that right now he is improved. He is dramatically improved since joining the Philadelphia Flyers. However, he's still in his early 30s now. Guys in their early 30s, especially guys who are not stars, do tend to decline. You are risking, number one, him getting hurt and then you not having the ability to trade him and you having to keep that contract on your books the rest of the way, knowing that he's not part of the future. You're risking that. Instead, if you trade him now, you know that he has value. You know teams are interested. And to me, because what we've heard thus far about Risto is, yes, they're willing to take offers, they're willing to listen, but they want a 1st-round pick and they don't want to retain any salary. I think that's fine to say.
That's a great starting point.
Yes. But if it gets to be March 5th and there's a team saying, we'll take his whole salary and we're not going to make you retain, but we're only going to give you a 2nd-round pick, yeah, I'm doing that. To me, it's like, yeah, we want a 1st and we don't want to retain anything. To me, you get to pick one or the other with him. Because I think he's good. He's a much improved player. He is.
But this is not a number 1 defenseman we're talking about here.
No, there's a risk at any time that either he gets hurt and then nobody wants him, or he regresses because he's getting older and then nobody wants him.
What if it's just Bradshaw? Like, what if he's just the magic sauce here, and like all of a sudden in a different defense, in a different system with different partners? Now he has excelled with different partners this year.
Yeah, I don't think it's the partner thing. But it might be the system, but I don't think it's the partner.
I don't think it's the partner thing because he's played with Sanheim and he was good. He played with Emil Andre and he was good. Now even he and Igor Zamula looking pretty freaking good. Like, I don't know.
I think it's Risto.
But yeah, he's looked good regardless. But you never know. It could just go away because he's in a different environment.
Yeah, could.
Like, this is a dude, I think his first 3 years here, I did the math. He missed like 30% of the games. Now, a huge chunk of that is last year.
Sure.
But like, he played 66 games his first year here. Even 74 the next year. Like, okay, that's a decent number, but still missed some time.
Still missed 8 games.
Yeah, like it's not as if it's not a risk, his health. If you had to choose, because this article is about what Charlie would do, so I get to ask your opinion. What's more important, salary retention or a premium asset in return?
I think it depends on the asset. Like if by not retaining the best you're going to get back for Risto is a 4th-round pick, then I probably look into retaining. But if I can get a 2nd-round pick while not retaining, I probably would rather do that than to get a 1st-round pick and have retention for the next 2 seasons for Risto.
With 2 years left, I think you have to figure out a way for someone to take on that full salary, even if it means, we're going to get, a Jennings-level prospect and a 3rd back or something like that. Like, I'd be willing to do that to get the 5.1 off the books. I realize, like, he's not a black hole in the salary cap the way he was. And like these next couple of years, they're going to be opening up some space. The cap's going up. It's not the worst thing in the world to retain. I want a clean sheet. Like, I want Danny to have everything he needs to be able to move forward. And like, maybe that is a 1st-round pick and you have to cover, even if it's not 30% of his salary for a couple more years. Okay. But I just think it's important for them to open up these books and not have restrictions the way they've had for the last 10 freaking years.
I just don't want... What have we been hearing for the last year from Briere and Keith Jones, really from everybody in the Flyers organization, that, well, we can't make the big moves because we got to wait till this dead money gets off the books. And you know what? I think people, for the most part, not everybody, but for the most part, I think people are willing to acknowledge, okay, yeah, we know that you got to clean up your books a bit. We'll be willing to be patient. If you then retain a bunch on Risto, then you're like, are you just kicking the can down the road even further? Yeah. Then are we going to hear next summer that, well, we got to wait until the Risto contract is off the books entirely? No, there has to be an endpoint to this. And that's why I'm so hesitant to retain on Risto, because it would be another 2 years. Then that would push it down to 2027 when all this dead money's off the books. All of it. I want there to be an endpoint for this dead money. And the thing is, too, with Risto, you do have the leverage of you don't have to trade him. He is a good player. It's not like Kevin Hayes, where they decided they needed to get rid of him because they didn't think he was a good guy to have in their room.
The coach openly was like, he's not even a center. It's like, well, that's his value.
Yeah. They did not want a guy who the coach was openly I wouldn't say feuding, but like it was very clear that John Tortorella did not think highly of Kevin Hayes' playing style and did not like the fact that a guy whose playing style he did not think fit his system had such a high stature in the room. He wanted that excised. Ristolainen, I think they're totally fine with him being in the room. Yeah. He does everything they want him to do. He's a good soldier. He plays physical. They love that. So they don't need to trade him. That said, I think they should trade him.
All right, before we go any further, let me tell you about our friends at Golden Nugget Jewelers. Listen, we're all having a lot of fun right now. Maybe some anxiety too, but it's a pretty damn good time watching the birds hunt down rings. But it's not nearly as fun when you have to do it yourself. And I'm talking to everyone out there who might have to be on the hunt for a ring. I've done it, and let me tell you, it's stressful. You don't know what you're doing, what you're buying. We don't know about this stuff. It's really hard to know. That's why you need the experts at Golden Nugget Jewelers. They're down there on the corner of 8th and Chestnut in downtown Philly. Family-owned and operated business since 1987. And if you're getting engaged, they have a wide assortment of rings and wedding bands to fit anyone's style. And you'll receive a free cleaning and written appraisal with every engagement ring purchase. And they're not just for wedding jewelry. You can find watches, diamond necklaces, bracelets, earrings. So much going on at Golden Nugget Jewelers. Listen, you deserve an expert and the best price. Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Head over to goldennuggetjewelers.com to learn more. While we're here, listen, you just saved some money, got a great price on a ring. Now it's time to treat yourself to a new pair of Shady Rays. That's right. It might be cold here in Philly, but it's never too early to start thinking about the summer and the sun. Listen, just because it's winter, you know what they say. It's always sunny in Philadelphia. Our friends at Shady Rays are helping you get in the right frame of mind with their premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays, an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their sunglasses have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all adventures. If you're a skier or snowboarder, they have a brand new collection of snow goggles, help you look good out on the slopes. So many available colors. They're all sorts of styles. They have everything you need at Shady Rays. And listen, maybe you want to head down to New Orleans in a couple weeks? You need some Shady Rays. You need to look good down on Bourbon Street. And PHLY viewers and listeners, you got to go to shadyrays.com and save 35% off polarized sunglasses with code PHLY. Over 300,000 people have rated Shady Rays 5 stars, so use code PHLY today at shadyrays.com. All right. That's the Risto thing.
Yeah, and another thing I did want to point out, because I didn't mention it, but I obviously put it in the article. Another reason why I think they should trade Ristolainen is because they need to clear up some spots. They have guys down in the AHL, namely Emil Andre. I know he's currently a little banged up, but my understanding is it's not terribly serious.
He's not on IR.
Yeah, he'll be back soon enough. They have guys like Emil Andre. They have guys like Hunter McDonald, who functionally is expected to take over the Risto role at some point in the next couple years. Who do you have in the NHL? You're not getting rid of Cam York, probably. Sanheim's locked up forever. You've got Drysdale, who I guess they could theoretically give up on, but they did trade Cutter Gauthier for him, and it seems like he's starting to progress. And then there's a fourth that I'm forgetting.
Nick Seeler.
Nick Seeler, who they have signed for another 3 years. So that's 4 spots that are taken. If you keep Risto, that's just one spot available. And you have these guys, like particularly Andre, who seem to be at least NHL ready, if not ready to thrive in the NHL. I want to clear out some spaces to get some of those guys up. And honestly, this may sound harsh to Risto, but we talked about it last year. Look, you could have traded Nick Seeler. You made the decision that you needed Nick Seeler. You had to re-sign him, that he was too important to the culture, and that's fine. He's a good player. I really like Nick Seeler a lot. But by making that decision, you now put yourself in a position where you have to trade Ristolainen. You have to. Because if you don't, then you're going to be keeping these guys down in the AHL way too long. Guys that are ready. And here's the thing, too. I want these guys, these young, talented blue liners, I want them up here with Brad Shaw because I have that much respect for his ability to develop defensemen. Like you could say, yeah, you can't hurt him from overcooking him in the AHL. You're right. Probably not going to hurt Emil Andre. But you know what I think would help him a lot more? Learning under maybe the best defensive assistant coach in hockey.
That's a really good point.
Just saying.
Like so much of the excitement about from the front office about Mish coming over was like Torts gets his hands on him now. And Emil Andre or Hunter McDonald or whoever it might be, like you look at the work Brad Shaw has done with some of these blue liners from Travis Sanheim.
Ristolainen.
Yeah, that's like from Travis Sanheim, who were like, all right, he's got some upside. He's a good player. Is he like what's his role exactly? I don't know. Now it's like, oh yeah, he's a top 4 defenseman, absolutely. Yeah. Rasmus Ristolainen, who we were all like, my God, really? This dude, and now it's Risto's pretty good. Yeah. I mean, they don't have to trade him. They should.
Solid enough secondary defenseman.
He's fine. Like the work he's done with some of these guys, it's we think very highly of Emil Andre. The organization feels very highly of Hunter McDonald. Well, let's let Brad Shaw coach him.
Exactly.
And you just don't know how much time you have. Yeah. I think they need to do a thing where, like, if Torts, I don't think they're going to make him their next head coach after Torts. That's not what the Flyers do.
But I want to keep him.
That's he's either the head coach of the Phantoms, a highly paid head coach of the Phantoms, or like head of player development, somewhere still in this organization, if not in the role he's in now. But coaches don't always love someone else's assistants hanging around. So
that's one of the reasons why when we talk about Mike Sullivan as an option, if he were to theoretically lose his job in Pittsburgh at some point,
you got to believe he's going to.
Given the fact that him and Torts are best friends, I imagine that Mike Sullivan would be very open to the idea of keeping around Brad Shaw, who John Tortorella, I'm sure, would give the biggest endorsement possible to one of his best buddies.
You would think. Right. All right, number 2 on your list, Charlie. This is one where I was like, do I even bring this up on the show? Because
it's a controversial one, but I hope so.
You know that it's like it was a tweet, like the meme, like, no, I'm not responding to that. That's a person with a fetish for getting yelled at, and I'm not feeding into it. For somebody who needs to stay off social media because people are insane, you're fueling them with number 2. Yeah. But I respect it. Honestly, I respect you giving this opinion.
Because I want to make my opinion clear that people are going to say, why aren't you killing them for not trading Scott Laughton? The reason why I'm not killing them for not trading Scott Laughton is because I don't think they should necessarily trade Scott Laughton.
Number 2 in your article about the trade deadline and your thoughts on it, keep Laughton unless someone dramatically overpays. And
I am very much in line with the Flyers thinking on Scott Laughton. And I freely acknowledge that.
That's what I was going to say. Like, that lines up with exactly what they've said openly and on the record. This isn't something that it's like, well, like Elliot Friedman going, I've heard that they're only going to do it for like a first or multiple, premium assets. It's like, no, they've said this multiple times that it's at least a first-round pick for Scott Laughton. I have come to grips with that. Like, given that your article is based on what you would do, I would trade Scott Laughton. I just have come to grips with the fact that they're never going to.
Right.
Like, maybe
you've accepted the reality of the situation.
Maybe the Maple Leafs are like, we just need him that bad. We just need him for some reason. We need him that bad. And here is our first-round pick. I think next year's because they don't have one.
Probably.
And then, like, a decent first-round pick from 2 years ago.
They make a Nick Foligno offer when they overpaid for him the year they thought he was going to put them over the top, and he didn't. But they still gave up a ton for him.
I understand the role he plays in this locker room. I get that it's way more than, like you said in your article, it's way more than the points he produces on the ice. Yeah. And I know that we all can kind of roll our eyes at the idea of culture sometimes. But like, culture isn't just that everyone in the locker room gets along. It's what you were talking about earlier, like trading for a goalie so the structure stays together.
Yes.
Like, the culture is something that they're building, so it is a baseline for them when a couple of years from now it's not, oh, we just need we need a leader to tie this room together. And then you have to go make the Scott Laughton trade. Like, that's part of it to me, is like, you don't want to be the team that's like, I guess we have to give up our third best prospect and a first round pick because our room is not even in disarray, but like, we just need that one more piece of glue, I guess, like sandpaper, whatever the hell you want to call it.
I don't even think it's glue or sandpaper. I think, and this is really what it boils down to for me with Scott Laughton. If this plan of theirs is going to work, player development needs to be good. They need to be really good at developing the guys they have. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that all the guys they have currently have star level potential. Matvei Michkov definitely does. The rest of them, depending on your feelings about guys like Forster or York or, or Andre when he comes up, I don't know if any of the rest of the guys on the team have true blue chip star potential. But they need all of those guys to get better. They need them to be better than they are. And in my time around the team, the conversations that I've had, both on the record and off the record, with players, with people in the organization, I believe, and look, you can distrust this. You can say, I don't buy it. You're full of crap. I believe, based on what I have seen and what I have heard, that Scott Laughton's presence on the team in that room helps player development. It helps more guys achieve their ceilings. And I am willing to sacrifice the second round pick that they could get for trading Scott Laughton. I'm willing to sacrifice that to make it 15% more likely that Tyson Forrester hits his ceiling. Because I believe that Scott Laughton and his way of managing the room and making it so players who aren't necessarily the most naturally confident feel good about being part of the Flyers team, I think that is important to making this rebuild work. And I'm not willing to just give that away just to say that, well, we traded Scott Laughton because he's not that good and we needed a pick because we needed to pacify everyone on Twitter who yells about it constantly. If I believe that Scott Laughton helps player development, and I do, then I'm not going to give him away unless a team overpays me.
It's one of these things that there's no way to prove or disprove it. I am inclined to trust the organization's take on it because we have seen, and not just like in recent history, like we've seen 20 years of, maybe the room wasn't that good or the room's great and things like, if this is important to them and it's part of the plan, like I said, with Danny needing all the tools he can, like all the cap space, the clean sheet, like if this is something he thinks he needs to make the plan work, I guess I have to accept it. Like, other people won't, and that's their prerogative. They may end up being right. I don't know how you prove this right
or
wrong.
Prove it one way or the other.
This isn't something I think there's a right answer to. It's one of those things, like, it's an intangible for a reason. There's no way to know the value of it, but they're telling you there's value. So,
and I think it
really comes down to your trust of the organization.
To me, it's not even like, I don't think in this case I am just saying, I'm blindly trusting Danny Briere and the organization. I'm trusting what I've seen and heard with my own eyes and ears about how he works the room and how he makes he helps create, he drives an environment that I think is highly conducive to guys hitting their theoretical ceilings, much more so than the average room.
You have the, I don't know, luxury, but like in terms of this conversation, the luxury of actually having had the conversations that like people are going to have with themselves in the chat, or I can ask you, but like you've heard from people directly who believe this and have seen it, and you interact with these players on a nearly daily basis. So take it for what it's worth.
I had a long conversation today, actually, with Garnet Hathaway. And this was all on the record. We were chatting about Noah Cates because I'm working on a larger feature on Noah Cates' emergence. And he made the point that Noah Cates is kind of a naturally shy guy, but he feels like over the last few months especially, he's really starting to come out of his shell. And I asked Garnet Hathaway, I said, why does it seem like guys in this room that there are shy players, guys like Owen Tippett, even Travis Sanheim to a degree, even though he's been around here forever, why does it seem like they feel comfortable and confident to come out of their shells and then become, in my opinion, better players, partially as a result of just feeling better about being part of this team. He said, look, that culture was there before I got here, and it's really kind of amazing to see, but everyone just knows that there's just a real supportive group here. And I'm not saying it's all Scott Laughton, but I think a lot of it is. I think he really shapes that feeling of, we're all in it together. And hey, you might not have the boisterous jock personality, but you're one of us. And not only are we going to have your back, we're going to, make sure that you're included in social events. We're going to make sure that you feel like you're part of the locker room conversations. And I truly do believe that comfortable, confident hockey players are more likely to hit their ceilings. And I think Scott Laughton plays a big role in helping guys achieve their ceilings, as we saw with a guy like Owen Tippett, who was a throw-in a trade where it wasn't clear he was going to be an NHL player. I don't know what he's ultimately going to become, but he's a heck of a lot better here than he was in Florida.
Yeah, he's an NHL player.
Yeah.
We'll see what he becomes. But all right, before we wrap up today's show, just want to say we appreciate those of you watching on TV. Head over to allphly.com for more of the show. Just real quick, touch on number 4 from your article. We can do the Michkov stuff. We actually have, I can't believe it, 2 regular shows this week.
Amazing. They're only playing 3 games this week. Shocking.
Not a 4-game week. And the weekend off. It's really, this is like the best week of the season, honestly, until 4 Nations. Number 4 on your list, not feeling urgency to make a change of scenery trade now, but plan to do it in the summer.
Right.
And this is Morgan Frost.
Or Joel Farabee. And hey, it could be somebody different by the end of the year. The point I made in the article was, this time last year, we thought Joel Farabee was in the midst of a breakout season. He was going to finish with 65 points. It was a key part of the future. 3 months later, suddenly is this guy actually any good? Things change real quick in the NHL and on this team. So I'm not saying it's definitely those 2 guys. The point I make in the piece is basically this. There are a lot of people on social media who are on a daily basis yelling for Danny Briere to make a trade. That you make a trade now, you can't close, he's never going to do it, he's a coward. And I think even the vast majority of those people, if you hook them up to a lie detector, they would say it's not the end of the world if those trades don't happen at the deadline. The reason why I think they're so angry is because they've just lost faith that Briere is going to make that trade ever. And what I say in the piece is that, look, Danny Briere can't do this because he obviously needs to keep his negotiating leverage. He can't go out there tomorrow, because we're going to talk to him tomorrow for his mid-season press conference. He can't go out there and be like, yeah, I'm not going to make any big trades in March, but don't worry, I'm going to make 2 or 3 real big ones in the summer. He can't do that.
You can't say that.
But in this experiment, this thought experiment, I can. So I say in that piece, look, I'm probably not going to make a big trade, aside from Risto, probably, in March. But expect a couple big trades to happen in the offseason, because I am intent on doing it. I think the Flyers do have to make some big trades this summer, but I don't think they have to rush into them for the deadline just because fans are yelling at Danny to make a trade.
Where I am, your point is, I buy it. I buy your point of view on this. I think the 2 players we have named here are in different circumstances. Like Joel Farabee, he's locked up, and I'm willing to give him the rest of this season and see what happens. And hey, if in the summer they're still just like, I don't think this is a fit, go ahead, trade him or bring him back for another year. We'll see how the hell it goes. He's under contract, whatever. Morgan Frost, given the need for centers around the league, depth scoring centers, especially given his price tag, given his expiring contract, I think this is of the highest value he will ever be. And if the idea is to get a really good return on a player who is pretty good, it's just I don't know how he factors into this team, what his role. I'm done with him. I'm done. And Grant, that is a part of it as well. I'm just sick of this dude. I'm sick of Joel Farabee too, but I acknowledge there still might be something else. I'm just done with Morgan Frost. He can have 100 points in the next 30 games. I'm I don't care. That's where I am with Morgan Frost. Because you know what he won't have? 20 points next October. And I realize his numbers look good at the end of the year. He just doesn't need to be on my team. But I think I'm in 2 different spots with those 2 different guys individually. But the idea of he has to make a trade, I think it would be great if he got something for Rasmus Ristolainen and made some normal trade deadline moves. I don't think it's of the utmost importance that he has to make one of these change of scenery trades. I just think if you want to move on from Morgan Frost, which I don't see why they wouldn't, if you want to move on from Morgan Frost, now's the time to do it.
My view with Morgan Frost, I think, is, and at this point, I am very much leaning towards if I'm the GM of the Flyers, I trade him this summer. I don't think the Flyers, as currently constituted, should be trading Morgan Frost without having a center replacement. Now, whether that's a long-term potential 1C or whether that's even just a stopgap. And I don't know if you can pull that off at the deadline, where you trade Frost and then immediately get someone else back. I don't want to run the rest of the season with Scott Laughton as the 2C. I don't.
Rodrigo Abols.
Oh, my God.
All right, let's hit those super chats. 3 of them today. First one here from JH. Why do they keep denying us Senior Dick?
Tony Dick.
People love Tony Dick.
They love them.
They
some
really
Tony Dick.
love Tony. I would love Anthony Richard. But the thing is, they need a center. They have a lot of wingers. He's fun. He's fast. He scores. Phantoms need him. Let him try to win us a Calder. If we can't get the Calder Trophy, he'll try to get a Calder Cup with Anthony Richard.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen either. But
you
never know.
Charlie, I'm just trying to trying to be positive here. It's Eagles playoff season. I'm all about the optimism. All right, another one here from JH. They have a strong goalie pipeline. Need to stop kowtowing to Kolosov. Let him take his puck and go home.
I guess we'll see.
I'm inclined to agree. I just don't understand. Sometimes there is no negotiating with a crazy person. And I'm not saying he's literally insane.
Right.
But if you have an illogical, if you're coming from it and you're not a rational actor in this conversation, all right, well, how can I make you see what you clearly don't want to?
He should be in the AHL.
Yeah, everyone can say it. It's obvious.
It's obvious.
He has some upside, I think. How can he get there without ever playing? I don't know. All right, and finally from Gary B, Lotz will get at least 1 goal tomorrow night. Go Flyers. Maybe that's something we look at on the Bet365.
Very possible.
Pre-game picks.
I would expect him to be in the lineup. It would surprise me.
It would be a major surprise. Yeah.
Be a pretty big surprise.
All right. And that is all the time we have for you on PHLY Flyers, presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We'll be back tomorrow with pre- and post-game. Make sure you follow us right here on the YouTube page. Hit that reminder bell so you never miss a live show. Follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers and follow the podcast wherever you get those. Just search PHLY Flyers. That's it for today. I'm Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Until tomorrow, let's go Flyers.
We all silly like the mayor.